Good Wednesday morning, everyone. How's it going? It's day two of the post Ken Norton Jr. era in Seattle. And the Seahawks are kicking the tires on more replacement candidates. And I want to talk about one guy in particular in this video who the Seahawks have apparently requested an interview with, and that is Sean Desai, currently of the Chicago Bears. Young guy, he's only 38 years old, doesn't have a whole lot of experience in the NFL, doesn't have a whole lot of experience coaching in general compared to somebody like Ed Donatel, who I'll talk more about later. But there is sort of a common denominator here, and I think it's kind of telling about the direction that this team is looking to go in. Sean Desai has connections. In fact, I'd say his major connection so far in his NFL coaching career is Vic Fangio. He was the defensive quality control assistant, which I don't know exactly what a quality control coach would do, other than, I guess, control the quality. But Sean Desai was the quality control defensive coach under Vic Fangio for, I believe it was 4 years in Chicago. So most of Sean Desai's bones, most of the stuff you can credit to him now having an opportunity to be an NFL defensive coordinator comes from his experience with Vic Fangio. So between Donatel and now Desai, it seems like the Seahawks are looking to get somebody who is an underling of Fangio to run their defense, or, well, play call their defense. A couple people on Twitter have already noted that our defense, in the way that it was playing at the end of the season last year, was somewhat similar to the Vic Fangio defense. So it seems like they've kind of decided that we're already going that way anyway. Let's go bring in somebody who can push us even further into that direction. So if we do end up with a Donatel or a Desai, that's probably the idea here. Now, why don't we just go get Vic Fangio? Everybody could have a theory about that. I don't think we will. I think that if we were going for that, you would have already heard it. Vic Fangio is somebody who's probably going to be gone pretty quickly here as a defensive coordinator, unless he really wants a head coaching job. If I had to guess, I would say that Carroll wants somebody who can do Fangio stuff, but he doesn't want Fangio because Fangio would want too much control of the defense. And Carroll's just not ready to do that yet. That would be my guess, but everyone has a theory. So let's take a look at Sean Desai now. Let's just try to evaluate him objectively and see what we can say about him. So, like I said, he's young. He's only 38, and his experience as an NFL coach is less than a decade. He was the defensive quality control coach in Chicago for, I believe it was 5 years, and then, 6 years. Then he was their safety coach, and he's been the defensive coordinator for now 1 season. So it's not a lot, but it's an arc, and it's an arc that has led him to the point where he can be a defensive coordinator in the NFL. Now, I want to briefly take a look at some of the things that he has touched in his coaching career. Obviously, everything we're going to look at here, it's not necessarily an indictment on him, nor is it a testament to how great he is. At the end of the day, when you're a defensive quality control coach, can you really take that much credit for what's happening, good or bad? But it's the best we can do. So the 2013 Chicago Bears went 8-8 with Mark Trestman. I think this was the team that missed the playoffs by one game. And their defense was really, really bad. 30th in the league. They they were terrible against the run, especially. Teams were just gashing them on the ground all season long. It was one of the worst defenses in Bears history in all likelihood. 2014, the team falls off to 5-11, and their defense is still one of the worst in the league. Now they're a little worse against the pass, a little better against the run, but it don't matter. It's all bad. It's all terrible. Awful, awful defense, awful team. We're not getting off to a good start here. 2015, they bring in John Fox to kind of caretake the garbage for a few years. They bring in Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator, and things do start to turn around. defense is 20th in points allowed and 14th in yards, so it's okay. I think that this indicates they were getting hung out to dry a little bit by their offense, but it's okay. Not a terrible defense. And then that moves us to 2016, where they bottomed out at 3-13. Their defense was bad, but not terrible, I guess. They really struggled against the run again, but I don't think it was a terrible defense. And then in 2017, you had another bad season, the final John Fox year, 5-11, and their defense was actually top 10. Now, a big reason why they might have been top 10 was because their offense was so bad that other teams didn't even really need to do that much to win games. Nevertheless, they were top 10 in scoring. That means something, and they were making positive progress. And this segues into the year where the Bears actually put together a great defense with Desai as their quality control coach. 2018, the Bears trade for Khalil Mack, and under new coach Matt Nagy, they put together the number 1 defense in the NFL in terms of points allowed and number 3 in yards. So things turned around very quickly in Chicago this year. They had probably the best defense in the league, led by guys like Khalil Mack and Eddie Jackson. It was a team that actually was remarkably close to winning every game they played. I remember this team quite well because my best friend is a Bears fan. This team actually, all 5 of their losses this year came in some of the most agonizing ways you can ever imagine. Now, at this point, Vic Fangio got a head coaching job in Denver, so he left. And Desai got a little bit of a promotion to safety coach. Not a defensive back coach, a safety coach. Now, in 2019, the Bears obviously slipped a decent amount, but their defense was still really good. They were 4th in points allowed, 8th in yards allowed. It was a still very good defense, and they did it despite having a really bad offense. Now, sometimes that can help you, but this was still a very credible defense, a very good defense. And their safeties in 2019 were Eddie Jackson. I think we all know who Eddie Jackson is. And in 2019, he didn't have his best year, but he did make the Pro Bowl. His best year was, of course, 2018 when he made the All-Pro team and was probably the best safety in the league. But Eddie Jackson, still a Pro Bowler, still having a good year. And I like the fact that he was a safety coach at this point, because when we're trying to figure out who we pull in to be our defensive coordinator, I think one of the biggest questions we need to be asking ourselves is, can this guy get the most out of Jamal Adams? Because to me, a big reason why Ken Norton Jr. is on the unemployment line right now is because he couldn't get the most out of Jamal Adams this last year. Jamal Adams was ultimately just another safety. He was a good safety. The coverage numbers show that, but he was just another safety. And maybe a background from Desai as a safety coach will allow him to get more out of Jamal. His other safety this year was actually Clinton-Dix, who stopped in for 1 season for the Bears, and he had a good year. 2 interceptions, played in every game, 78 tackles. So it's not a bad resume. And in 2020, he kept that job, and the defense continued to slip without Fangio. They were down to 14th in the league. So probably about an average to slightly above average defense. They still had Eddie Jackson, but their new safety opposite him was Deshaun Gibson, who had a pretty decent year for the Bears in 2020. And that led to him getting promoted to defensive coordinator in 2021, and nothing really went well for the Bears in 2021. Their defense was 22nd in the league, but they were 6th in yards. So that can tell you a few things, right? That can tell you that the offense is really not helping the defense out at all. They're turning the ball over a lot. They're giving the other offenses short fields. They are really just... The defense is probably fighting really hard, but they can't stop giving up points because their offense keeps putting them in bad positions. Now, it's also true that their offense was so bad that sometimes that actually helps your defense because the defense isn't going to give up as many points. But overall, I think that this Bears defense was decent. it was a big step down from the Fangio years. I wouldn't call it good. I think it's a little too presumptuous to call this defense good when they're 22nd in points allowed, but I think some of these numbers might be a little bit misleading. They did do some things well, and one thing that I want to highlight here, and I'm highlighting this because if there's a secondary goal with the defense in 2022 for the Seahawks, after maximizing the talents of Jamal Adams, it would probably be advancing the career of Darrell Taylor into becoming a sack artist. And one thing about the Bears in 2021 is that Robert Quinn had a fantastic year rushing the passer. It wasn't quite a career year because he did have 19 sacks in 2013, so it's not, I understand that it's not like Desai developed Robert Quinn. Robert Quinn was a great player before he got to Chicago, before 2021. But this is a pretty massive turnaround for a guy who the previous year had 2 sacks and looked like he might have been, one of those super overpaid pass rushers who has a career year to get paid and then they chill out. Robert Quinn's career is kind of remarkable. If you take a look at these numbers, the way he's been up and down multiple times, it's looked like it was over, and then it wasn't over, and then it was over, and now it's not over. So, bottom line is, one of the best parts of the Bears defense in 2021 was that they took a guy like Robert Quinn, and they turned him into a sack artist again. Now, he had been a sack artist before, like I said, but nevertheless, he revived his career in 2021, and as a team that has somebody like a Darrell Taylor to hopefully develop in 2022, I guess that's a little bit exciting. So that's the Sean Desai resume in full. It's not a whole lot to go on. There is some stuff to like. Obviously, the main pull here is that he's a Fangio guy, but there's some stuff here to get excited about too when thinking specifically about this Seahawks defense. See you guys later. Peace out. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think.